Alright, how's it going, y'all? So DSM 7.2 has finally come out in beta for Synology NAS, and I'm very excited. And there is a ton of other stuff we're going to be covering in this video because a ton have changed. You may notice I'm in a brand new room. I have moved from Huntsville, Alabama to Raleigh, North Carolina. My office currently looks like a NAS Compares video with all the boxes everywhere. But we are finally getting moved in, and I have been very excited because DSM 7.2 beta has come out, and it has so many features that I've really been looking for a long time. Things that people have been asking for a really long time. Things like Worm, things like encrypted volumes, rather than that kind of janky encrypted share folder method from all the previous versions. Things like SMB Multichannel. There's so many things that have been added to this release finally that people have been really asking for, and I'm excited for it to go live. It is a much more substantial, for the general user, update than DSM 7.1 was. And DSM 7.1 was kind of lackluster. It was great for enterprise and it was great for stability and a lot of stuff like that. But DSM 7.2 has a ton of stuff in here that is going to be awesome once it comes out. So before I go ahead and get started with this video, I want to do the obvious disclaimer. This is a beta. And do not install beta software on your NAS unless you're comfortable losing all of the data on that NAS. So if you're constantly backed up and you're like, you know what, if I lose the data for a few days while I'm recovering from backups or whatever, fine. But for businesses and everybody who really relies on their NAS for actual work or anything like that, do not install this. Install it on your actual test unit or something like that, but do not install it on a production unit. Synology's betas do tend to be very, very, very stable, and this one has been so far for my testing, but you never know. And a NAS should not be something that's the newfangled toy, even though it is, especially for me. It really should be something that is rock solid and stable, and that's why you probably do not want to install beta on your main server. But I did, and we're going to go over all the great features in this video. And so before we get started in that, I want to go over a ton of stuff that has happened kind of all in one video, because basically in the last 2 weeks, massive shift in life. So my wife and I have both quit our jobs and we now do this full time. We sold our house in Huntsville and moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, drove a 26-foot U-Haul, which was an absolute blast. The channel also hit 50,000 subscribers, which is absolutely insane. So thank you so much for everybody who joined and subscribed. It's been crazy. It's been everything happening right at the end. I had my first person just recognize me. It was actually my last day of work and somebody recognized me. It was just absolutely a wild 2-week period in here where just everything's changed. The other thing I did is I finally spun up SpaceX forums. And that is something I've been wanting to do for a really long time because I get a lot of emails from people and a lot of just comments on YouTube and things like that where people have this same question over and over and over again. And at a certain point, I just can't answer all of those anymore. So now I've set up forums.spacerex.co, and that is where I'm going to be answering all those questions. So if you have a more technical question, put it in there and just tag it help. And that way, the next person who has that question can type the question into Google and hopefully get directed there. That's the thing about YouTube comments. They're not Google searchable. Reddit is closer, but still, it's pretty hard to get good search in Reddit. And so it's nice to have a repository for everything. And the other thing is I was moving, and so that's actually where I put all the info when the beta came out originally. And I put it here. We're going to be going over that forum post, as well as diving into the beta and really looking into the things that I think are biggest for actual regular users. And I'm also going to be going in, and I'm actually going to be doing a lot of dedicated videos on features that people are really interested in. I know right off the bat, I'm definitely going to be doing one on encrypted volumes, going to be going over full performance benchmarks between that and encrypted shared folders and everything like that. And I'm also going to be doing one certainly on SMB multi-channel, which is going to be absolutely awesome for a lot of people who are stuck with NASs without 10 gig connections. And finally, probably one on Docker, which is now Container Manager. So I'm definitely going to be doing those 3, but anything else you want me to dive into, I don't know what people want unless they leave a comment or a post on forums or whatever. Probably going to be adding a video suggestion somewhere in here on the page. But yeah, just let me know. And if you know anything about forums and how to run them well, feel free to leave a comment. I need all the help I can get just setting all of this up and make it a place where people can really actually learn and get information they need. And so far, it's been a ton of fun. It's been really great interacting with people in a place where you can actually type out an entire answer, attach images, and like actually have a real conversation. Something that YouTube comments has just not given me. And currently, Synology Richie is currently winning the forum, so I'm putting that challenge out there to everybody else. All right, so now actually on to the actual part of this video, which is the Synology DSM 7.2 beta has finally come out. So it is pretty easy to install, though I will say sometimes the link has been going in and out for people. It was gone for a few hours when it first came out, so it may or may not go in and out, and if so, just come check back. And I've got the post right here. I'll leave a link to that in the description below, but you can just grab the link right here, and you essentially just put in your model, and you can just download the beta software. A really nice part about this is the fact that it is not a closed beta like Synology DSM 7 was. And so we can actually make videos on it, which is great. With DSM 7, you had to sign this lengthy NDA that you were early access, you had it before everybody else. And so you couldn't make videos on it. But right here, to install it, you just select your model and hit download, and then you pretty much just do a manual update. I laid out here. It's pretty easy. You literally just go into manual DSM update and upload it, and it works. My update probably took maybe 20 minutes max from the entire thing. And so it's pretty easy to go ahead and do. Though remember, it is a beta. Do not install it on the actual production software. So I want to go over a few really key pieces that are most interesting. And this right here is my test unit that is now on DSM 7.2 beta. It is a DS923 Plus, and I want to go over some of the biggest changes just right off the bat. So first off, Docker has been replaced by Container Manager right here. And this is not just like a reskin. Container Manager is a full overhaul of the entire Docker system on Synology, and I'm very happy about it. And so right off the bat right here, we can see something that a lot of people have been asking for, and it actually supports updating. So Docker containers have always been a bit weird how you update them. From the start, Docker was really designed for massive corporations. And so an update was actually just blow away the old one and rebuild the new one because everything was meant to be kind of automated. That's really where Docker came from, was these massive, massive scale out servers where you can spin up and down instances in seconds. And so that's why it was kind of kludgy at first, but now there's ability to update to latest tags. And so we can just see, oh, hey, look, there's an update for this image. Let's go ahead and click on details, update available, and we can just go ahead and we can update the image. And just like that, our container is updated. Now I will say this is absolutely beta software. It is absolutely kind of janky and you have to kind of fiddle with it to get it to work. I'm definitely going to go through and do a full-blown video on this, but it at least is set up to work there. And it only is going to support when you're pulling a latest tag, which makes sense. So if you're saying latest, that means you want the latest version. And so that is the only time automatic updates will be able to be done. So right now, it's a work in progress, but at least it does have the capability to have automatic updates, which is going to be so much easier for people. All right, so that did just finish. And so a couple of other things I'm very excited about in here is we actually have projects which actually allow you to have Docker Compose files, which is going to be huge. So many tutorials you find online basically just lay out all these beautiful YAML files. It's like you do this and all of a sudden you've built everything you need. It's absolutely great. But you can't do that, or at least you couldn't do that stock Synology NAS. You would have to SSH in, do it all via command line. It's a little bit janky. But here, now it's just boom. We have Docker Compose built in, and it is going to be unlocking so much more potential to running these containers. This right here might be the biggest update to Docker in my opinion, because it is so many projects have built out these beautiful Docker Compose files that allow you to just have all of your settings via a single text input file rather than doing this all in the UI. So I'm very excited about this, and we'll be doing in-depth testing and everything as soon as I make that video. So that is a great thing. All right, so next up is my personal favorite, and that is SMB Multichannel. So we go into File, Services, SMB, and Advanced Settings. And now we have Enable SMB3 Multichannel. SMB3 Multichannel allows you to take multiple physical connections, so multiple actual networks on the back of your NAS, and actually combine them to get more than one network of throughput. So link aggregation does not allow you to get a single client more than 1 gigabit or 10 gigabit connection because it's only as fast as any one of the network connections in link aggregation. It essentially allows you to load balance multiple people, but does not allow you to get faster than one connection for a single client. SMB3 Multichannel allows you to do this. Now, this is not going to be for everybody, and it's actually disabled by default, and I think that is the correct move because SMB3 Multichannel is faster and slower depending on what you're doing. SMB3 Multichannel is way faster on a 1 gig connection where you have multiple 1 gig NICs on the back of the NAS. It is way faster in that case if you're just copying a large file over. But for somebody like a video editor, it's actually slower because video editing is not really about getting tons and tons of throughput. You don't need tons and tons of throughput with video editing. What you really need are stable frames. You need to be able to get frames quickly. And so SMB3 Multichannel, in my experience, can sometimes lead to dropped frames because it's coming through one of the different directions and it's got a higher latency, but higher throughput. And so that's why it's not enabled by default and it requires a custom network setup to do it. But I will definitely be doing a video on this and I'm very excited it's finally out. So that is a huge update that I'm very, very, very excited about. AFP is actually still going. I'm actually surprised. I was kind of convinced they were going to kill it off, but they're about backwards compatibility, which is good. But if you are on AFP, you should try to get off. And then the next thing that is really nice that they've got is worm shared folders. That is write once, read many. And so worm folders have a few different options here, and it's set up very strong. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this guy up right here for worm video. And then you've got 3 different options. Now you can add additional security. That is old school encryption is option 2, or have write once. Write once, read many. So this is essentially where you have the ability to lock files from being edited or deleted after they've been modified. So basically once you copy them into the share, they are now not going to be able to be edited. And there are kind of a few different options for this, and it's actually very robust to cover pretty much anybody's workflows. This is great for a share that people are really adding information into, but should not be removing from. So something like versioning or final documents sent to a client or anything like that where you want to make sure there is the full paper trail and somebody doesn't accidentally overwrite something, move a folder around, whatever. Basically the way it works is you set a few different options. And so I'm going to show you how this all works here. Once we click through here, we're actually going to get a notice that, hey, when you have write once, read many, recycling bins no longer work. Makes sense. So we're just going to include. And there are 2 different options for this worm. There's enterprise mode and compliance mode. All right, really quick retraction. So I actually thought enterprise mode allowed regular administrators to actually delete files onesie twosie from moving files around. It actually turns out that they can only delete the entire share. So compliance mode keeps them from even being able to delete the share, while enterprise mode allows them to delete the share, though they still are unable to bypass the lock. That is at least how I understand it right now. I will be doing a much more in-depth video on this as it comes out. So there are a bunch of options here. First is going to be auto lock. So this is normally what people will have. So you can either have it lock immediately, or normally what you'll do is lock it after 2 hours. Maybe you want it to be 1 hour. It allows people to have a little bit of time to catch a mistake. Worm is really not for, once it goes there, lock immediately. At least not most implementations of it. So what you can do with this is, okay, somebody can drag a file in there and, oh crap, if they accidentally move it to the wrong folder or something, they can quickly just put it where it needs to be within the first hour. That's normally totally fine. Then after that hour expires, it's now locked. And then there are options here. You can either have it be locked for only 3 years. That's normally going to be for something like log files, things that do expire and you want to be able to clean out and you want to be able to archive. Maybe you just keep the past 2 years in this worm, and then after that, you're no longer governed to, you no longer need to, and you can allow your employees to move them or archive them or something. Or they can be locked forever. And then there's this really great lock state. You've got two different options, immutable or append only. Most people are probably going to be using immutable. That's just where it can't be changed at all. But there's also an option for append only. Append only really makes the most amount of sense for something like a log file. So maybe you're exposing your log files via NFS or SMB or something like that. And so you can essentially have these log files that cannot be edited, but they can be added to. So every single time there's a new log, it keeps getting added in. And that way nobody can delete log files, but they're not uneditable, right? So you can still add more logs to the end of the file. Most people will probably just use immutable because something like a Word document, I don't think you can even really append to it. But for people who have log files, I think log files are the only really thing I can see appending, but who knows, probably people have different workflows, or maybe like surveillance footage. I'm not sure how that actually works with the H.264 codec. You might be able to do with something like that, but you can have append only, though most people probably just immutable. It makes more sense. And then you get your regular options. And now, once we go in there and we add a file, so now we can go ahead and see, basically these files will automatically lock. Let's go into this file over here, where I've already set this up. So this right here is something that I have added into a previous folder, and we can go ahead and look at properties, and we can see that under write once, it is currently locked, and it will expire in a year and 364 days. So we can see that it is now locked, and we do not have the ability to delete this file. And that's how the lock works, which is something that specific people will really enjoy, though the majority of people will probably not be using this feature. Now onto a feature people actually will be using, and that is encrypted shares. Now we can actually have encrypted volumes, which is absolutely huge. So this right here is an encrypted volume. Let's go ahead and just delete the thing. And I'm going to talk about the new encrypted volumes and why it is so great. All right, really quick, this is an interjection from Will from the future, and I've got an update on my most recent video about how DSM 7.2 beta, the encrypted shares, could actually be mounted by anybody as long as they just did a soft reset on your NAS and changed the admin password. Essentially what was happening is the encryption keys were not being flushed like they should have been whenever there was a soft reset occurring. And I've got a great update on this. I have since received note from Synology Michael that said that this is expected behavior of the first DSM 7.2 beta. The responsible team is working on the mechanism to unmount the encrypted volume if a reset is performed. This will prevent access to data on encrypted volumes, even if both the system and drives are compromised. So this is a great update. And so originally I filmed the video and then I wasn't really going to post it just because it is a beta and things like that happen. Then I submitted the ticket just informing Synology of this issue through the bug tracker on DSM 7.2 beta. And the first ticket I got back was, our development team has confirmed that as of right now, DSM 7.2 beta, this is expected behavior. And that's the problem. That was all the ticket I got. Then after that, they say, this is currently all of the information that I can share about this presently. And so to me, I was like, oh, this is not a bug. This is like intended feature. And so that's why I did it. But the great news is it will be fixed in future revisions, almost certainly before DSM 7.2 fully comes out. But that is exactly the behavior I want to happen. I want to make sure those keys get flush on a soft reset or any other way that somebody could try to get access to the NAS. But overall, I'm very happy to say that when DSM 7.2 comes out, the encryption keys will be flush on a soft reset and hopefully any other way that the drives can be compromised. So that is great news. And that's exactly the behavior I would expect out of this system. And that being the case, I'm very excited for DSM 7.2 encrypted volumes because they are so much better than just having to do onesie-twosie encrypted folders. So that is great. Sorry for the confusion, everybody. I will be linking this. I already made an update on the other video, but check this out. We should be good to go, and I will be continuously updating this as time goes on. All right, and so now back to me going over this in my current video. So previously on DSM, you had to encrypt on the shared folder level, which honestly kind of sucked. It kept you from a lot of flexibility. It meant you had to manage all these keys. It meant that every single shared folder had to be encrypted. It meant that you had a file path limit. It meant that you could not do BTRFS snapshots and actually see previous versions in the file system. It had a lot of drawbacks, and it was very annoying, and it had a performance overhead. With DSM 7.2, you now have the ability to create an encrypted volume. So everything in that volume is encrypted, and it works so much better. This is something I've been really looking forward to, and it's going to be very nice to have. And it's just going to make a lot of things a lot easier for people who no longer have to question, oh, is that encrypted? How am I doing that? Instead, on startup, you just encrypt the entire volume, so everything in there is just encrypted. It's a huge deal, and I'm very happy it finally made it in there. So one thing, it is not backwards compatible. You cannot convert an existing volume to an encrypted volume, unfortunately. So that is one thing that is very unfortunate, but at least going forward, it will be there now. So to do one, we're just going to go ahead and create a new volume. And we will go ahead and give it the full amount of size. And we'll call it encrypted. We're going to choose BTRFS. And now we can encrypt the volume. And it is so much easier. So essentially the encryption key by default is automatically set up in your system partition. And so it automatically will mount this encryption key on boot, which is exactly what you want to happen because now it runs everything, not just the shared folders. And now I just need to unlock my encryption vault that I've already set up. And so the key will automatically be downloaded once I hit apply. This is one thing that they have now added in there. You have to click, I've received the recovery key and I will keep it safe, which makes a lot of sense. I've had people who accidentally lost these and it really sucks to tell them, hey, there's nothing you can do about it. That's the beauty of encryption and its downside. It works very well. If you don't have the key, you don't have the data. So right now it's going to go ahead and create that volume. And you can see right here, it's just got a little lock right there. And it's actually a lot simpler to use. So we go into our settings right here. We will see that we have the ability to regenerate the keys. And so right here, if we click regenerate, it's going to pop up and it's actually going to change the encryption key. So the previous encryption key you had will no longer work once you click OK. And so that way you can re-download it. So you want to make sure to keep that safe. Very important, because if you lose that key, your data is pretty much toast. I'm going to be doing a full in-depth video on that, but there's so many features there that have finally gotten in there and it's going to be great for people. So finally, the last thing to add on here is something I've not really delved into, but it's a very interesting setting under security, KMIP. So they're setting this up for the ability to have people send one Synology all of the keys for an entire enterprise, and that is the key server used for everything. And so I think this is going to make a lot of sense for, hey, you want to make sure all of your corporate offices have access to the key and you can protect it all in one place. So this is going to be very interesting. I'm not seeing any documentation or really anything on it. It just kind of showed up. But I do think this is going to be a very interesting and very useful feature for a lot of people. A couple other minor notes here. Quick Connect no longer has the setting for automatically applying port forwarding rules. So now Quick Connect will not do port forwarding on its own using universal plug and play. It now makes you do that, so you actually have to have the option, which I do think is better. For some reason, we're currently in beta, as you can tell. It is grayed out right here, but it does not automatically try to create the port forwarding rules anymore. A few other things to note that I'm really glad they did. I'm just going into the release notes. They actually have allowed a lot more units to use NVMe SSDs as actual volumes, all the way up to the 1821 plus and that entire line. So this is not something I thought they were going to do. I really thought they were just going to snap the chalk line right at the 23 models, but I'm glad they have made that backwards compatible because there was no reason for it not to be, especially because these are all the AMD chips. So however they've got it set up and optimized for AMD, it does make sense for that. And then finally, the last thing they've got in here is they've got a lot more notification information in here, which is going to be very nice. So they've got the ability to add teams and so many other different things to send notifications, which I know a lot of people really care about for actual big companies. So there's a lot of great things going on here. and I am very happy. So I think this is going to be a great update, and it's bringing a ton of features that a lot of people want and a lot of people are really going to use. And I'm excited to see what else comes out and how it progresses as time goes on. Go ahead and leave any other questions you've got for me or really any other specific tutorials you want me to check out here. This document right here on the forums is going to be living. I'm going to continuously add all the information in here because it is somewhere that's actually living and can be updated, and it's great to have like a written up version for everything. And join the forums. Yeah, they're fun. I'm starting to get a lot of people in there, and it's really great asking questions in there and answering them. I'll leave a link to all this in the description below, and have a good one. Bye.